Hi.
Trying to be creative. I just don't have it in me.
I know. That's okay. You don't have to be creative. But thanks for coming on the show again.
Of course. My pleasure.
I might actually have, we might make this a couple different episodes because I have a lot of other topics and questions as I shared with you before. But specifically today, and it was interesting because I was talking to Tony, our friend Tony that has Parkinson's, on the way here. And he's like, let me ask you a question. He's like, did your doctor ever talk about the, that scale I was just telling you about?
The UPDRS.
UPDRS. And I was like, I know I've heard of it, and I know, I think she's told me about it one time, but it's just not something that we talk about. So I want to talk about that, and then the overview of all the stages of Parkinson's.
Yeah.
Welcome to The Secret Life of Parkinson's, a podcast created by people living with Parkinson's to help break the stigma of a disease no one likes to talk about. Now here are your hosts, Jessica Krauser and Brian Baker. So what stage do you think I'm in? So tell me about so I know that there's early stage, middle stage, advanced stage. So 1 to 2, 3, and then 4 to 5. Is that right?
Right. So, short answer, there are no real stages of Parkinson's, right? It is, and we've touched on this many times, that it's not a cookie cutter disease. Everyone's different. So trying to group people in stages is hard clinically. Research-wise, it's done. Okay. So research-wise, there's certain criteria when we're trying to look for medications for early PD or for late PD or whatnot. And that's based off of patients having symptoms, whether it's unilateral symptoms, and then when it becomes bilateral symptoms on both sides, when walking is affected, plus or minus. So then stages are separated from that purely from a research perspective. From a clinical perspective, with looking at just patients one-on-one, the way I kind of look at it is early wise is sort of our honeymoon period. It's you get diagnosed because you're having a tremor or shuffling your gait or whatnot. And then you start on medication and you feel good. You feel better. Overall, you feel better. And that's the thing. You take the meds because it's time to take a med, not necessarily your body telling you you're due for a dose. Okay. That makes sense. You're told, take it breakfast, lunch, and dinner 3 times a day. You take a pill 3 times a day. You don't really notice on or off. You don't notice any of that. You just feel fine.
Yep.
You feel good.
Yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah, because I remember people talk about off times. I'm like,
what are you talking about? What are you talking about? I don't have an off time. You're messed up. You got something wrong with you.
And the goal is to keep people there as long as possible, right? And then we know as the disease does advance, you do get this sort of fluctuations where the pills don't last long, you get wearing off, they don't last the same dose, either doesn't last you through till the next dose, or you become dyskinetic. And it's sort of we have in the beginning the therapeutic windows like this. As the disease progresses, that sort of gets narrower. And as it gets narrower, now that same dose is taking longer to kick in, it can overshoot and you get dyskinetic. And then it sort of dies down a little bit faster than it normally would. And that's the general progression of disease. I personally am a little bit more the medication-wise, research-wise, new intervention-wise is looking at, okay, well, how do we treat wearing off? Let's get to it. So what's a new thing to decrease wearing off? And it's almost well, why do we even have to wear off? Why put patients through that? Why not do something sooner than later that they don't need to wear off?
What do you mean?
Whether it's considering surgery earlier, whether it's considering the pump earlier, where right now with insurance and things like that, it's you have to have documented that they did this, this, and this, or this was happening. They wear off for 4 hours. They have all this. But why? Why not get it to it early? And you don't have to put them through that. You don't have to put them through the fluctuations they get throughout the day. And then as it advances even more, those fluctuations now become spontaneous. Before you could calculate, you could be on the clock that, okay, at 3.5 hours, I know I'm going to wear off, right? And then that becomes now unpredictable. And that's when it becomes really bad, because then patients really suffer because they stop they stop leaving the house. They stop going to do things because what if I wear off? and my significant other is not going to be able to pick me up or not, you know. And so and I'm like, oh, this is happening. Okay, great. We could do Duopa. We could do DBS. We could do this sort of thing. But like doing it sooner would prevent that from even happening, theoretically.
Yeah. But we can't do it because of insurance.
Right.
They want to make us suffer. They want to make us suffer a little bit.
It is changing. DBS is being shown that, you know, doing it earlier does improve patients' quality of life. And so, you know, and we mentioned before that now that word advanced PD is no longer part of FDA criteria for DBS. It's just for Parkinson's, period. So you don't need to have quote unquote advanced.
Right.
And because we know that you can do better by getting it potentially done earlier.
Yeah.
So, like I said, that's one of the big things for me is helping in so many different ways, but not having those off periods, just
right.
And
yeah, I'm just starting to get there. I mean, I have been there, but even just like yesterday or the day before, I started doing 5Ks every day, walks.
Yeah.
Walking 5K a day. I started on August 1st because Melissa wanted to do like this exercise thing at the gym, like everybody do something.
Yeah, me too. I'm doing it right along with you.
Oh yeah. She just said try and do anything for like an extra 10 minutes just to kind of, you know, keep things interesting. But she said she was going to do a 5K every day. So I was like, I'll do a 5K every day up until the 5K for JK, which is our walk in September. And so anyway, so I've been doing it, and it's like sometimes I'm okay and sometimes I'm not. And I was doing it mostly at night until just the other day, and I did it in the morning. But I just took my medication because it was 7 a.m. I just took my meds. It was like 15 minutes in, and I started to walk, and I was like a little bit like Tin Man. I'm like going real slow, and I'm like my legs are like not bending or whatever. So I'm kind of like laughing to myself. And then literally it's like I hit a stride, and I just started moving.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the hell? So I looked at my watch, and I'm like, it's 7:30. I'm like, it kicked in. Yeah. It was like the weird, that's like because I think I'm so busy with the kids in the morning or like with work right away and just going that I can't ever say like, oh, this is when I'm off unless I'm really thinking about it. Right. So that was
in the mornings, I never noticed it being off in the mornings until you got on.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Then lunchtime back or, you know, 4 or 5 o'clock, it was like, okay. But yeah, the biggest thing is I remember like people talk about off periods, like, oh, what are you talking about off period? Like then as it progresses.
Yeah. And I can tell I'm starting to come off like half hour to an hour before my next dosage. But so early stage though, how long does that usually last?
Well, wouldn't that be depending on when you get diagnosed?
Right. Again, variable, usually 4 to 5 years. You know.
But what symptoms would you consider early stage?
Unilateral, usually one-sided. The same symptoms, whether it's tremor, whether it's stiffness, slowness, whatnot. Usually you'll be more one-sided versus bilateral symptoms. And balance plus or minus. Okay. Be affected. So we have, from a research perspective, in terms of staging of Parkinson's, it's called a Hoehn-Yahr scale, H&Y scale. And that kind of separates, you know, stage 1 is unilateral symptoms. 1.5 is unilateral symptoms with balance issues. Stage 2 is more bilateral symptoms. 2.5 is like, you know, bilateral with balance issues. Stage 3 is walker dependent or need aid of some sort. And then stage 4 is like bedbound. And those are sort of what they categorize in terms of the H&Y scale. Again, I never use that clinically. That is purely a research situation when you're looking at when you're trying to, you know, where can we help patients? What can we do if they reach this? What can we offer? So when you're looking at intervention and they're looking at different things, it's purely based off of that.
Okay. So and that goes same with that.
The UPDRS is different. So UPDRS is, so it's a Unified Parkinson's Disease Rating Scale. And what that is more, it's purely symptom based. So whenever you're in the office with your neurologist, they're always either measuring your tremor, making you do this and this, having you walk, seeing your stiffness. That they're rating at a scale, and that's the UPDRS. And what it is you get 0 meaning not there, 4 meaning severe. So it's a wide range out of 132 points. And the higher the number, the more severe your symptom. Not necessarily disease, just symptom.
So like if somebody has like a crazy severe tremor.
Right. They're going to technically score higher.
Yeah.
Where someone who's maybe just somewhat slow, they're not shaking at all, they're going to be lower, but they may have worse disease because they're slower, stiffer, more balance issues, but their UPDRS isn't that high because they're not really shaking. Someone who's predominantly tremor, but they're not really slow, so if their balance is great, their disease is actually mild, but their scale may show a higher scale just because of the way it's very, it is weighed towards tremor.
Yeah.
So you're measuring...
Well, even for that, I would think you don't have to go to the same physician, neurologist.
Correct.
Because, because the way you scale it may not be the exact same way.
So we all have to get certified.
Yeah.
So through the Movement Disorder Society, there is a certification for the UPDRS, and you have to kind of update that every couple of years. And you watch videos and you can rate. So everyone, essentially, if you're certified, you're kind of knowing you should be approximately around the same. But yes, and I do it regularly on every patient I see, and the reason why I do it, more importantly, is for patients, because I like to have a number when I'm diagnosing them, and then when they come back to see me again. They may be, if they're in the early stages, they may say, I'm not sure if it's really helping me, or if they're tremor predominant and they're like, well, I'm still shaking. I don't think the med's working because I'm still shaking, because levodopa may or may not help tremor, right? And then I show them, I'm like, well, when you were here first, you scored a 24, 25, right?
So you were up here and it took you down here.
Yeah,
You're just
look at where you are now.
Yeah.
And so you have improved. And so I have patients who... they won't leave without knowing what their number is.
I don't know what mine is right now.
I mean, when I saw you, that you were like a 1.
Yeah, because I think, but I remember the first time I hadn't taken my meds I think you told me I was like a 24, 23, 24. Yeah. Then another time after my surgery, I was like a 2 or 3 or something like that.
And is it you just base it off of the motor symptoms or what they describe as their non-motor as well?
So there's a separate non-motor scale. So the UPDRS, called? It's still UPDRS. There's the motor component, the physical exam component is like part 3. Then there's a part 2 that is looking at non-motor, and that's that's patient rated. You answer these questions.
Right.
And then there's a UPDRS, sort of like a dyskinesia component of it too, that's separate. So the main motor one is like the part 3 that we do on at each visit. And yeah, I mean, it's helpful significantly from patients seeing that they're getting better. And if I'm seeing, wait a minute, something's not right here. Why are your numbers being so off? And then from a DBS perspective, it's, that is a measurement that you have to be considered for surgery, is that you have to have 30-40% improvement in your UPDRS, because the idea is DBS gives you the same benefit that levodopa gives you, just more consistently.
So how do you find that out? I mean, do you have to go off meds then?
Yeah, so you're off for over 24 hours. No meds when you're getting evaluated. And for us, we have it where we have PT doing it, that, they're completely off. It's not fun.
That night's sleep would suck.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's not bad. I just took mine. You just don't take it in the morning.
What do you mean?
So when you're getting evaluated,
well, people do it
at the Cleveland
different places do it differently.
So
for us, it's 24 hours off.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, I just did not take a meds that morning.
Yeah.
And then I went and got evaluated. Then after the evaluation,
then
I
to give you meds. Okay. And then they measure you again, and then there's a percentage improvement.
Huh.
And you have to meet a certain percentage improvement to be considered a candidate, because then we're like, well, what are we doing? If they're not getting better with levodopa, then why are we going to do surgery? Because that's all surgery is really doing.
So like how much do you know what yours improved by?
Like going from like 20 something to like 3.
Okay.
To 2 or 3 or something.
And you said it has to be like a high number like that?
Not that. You have to have 30 to 40%.
30 to 40%. Okay.
Improvement. Huh. And that's also scale too, right? Because if it's tremor, we know that they may not got an improvement, but that's because they just tremor.
Yeah.
And we know DBS can do better for tremor than levodopa can. So some of that's also factored in a little bit. But that scale specifically is just a symptom scale, looking at your symptoms.
Do you know how many symptoms there are for Parkinson's?
A lot.
Do you guys go by like a defined number? Because I found one. I just didn't know.
No. I mean, we have like you mean in terms of like non-motor and motor?
Yeah.
I
was up since 3:30 this morning, so I've been on ChatGPT a lot.
Yeah.
And I can share a number.
Uh-huh.
So they were showing 25, motor and non-motor.
Okay. So I mean, motor-wise, you have your tremor, slowness, stiffness, gait. Non-motor, you're gonna look at smell, facial expression, voice, mood, memory, hallucinations, sleep fragmentation, RBD, restless leg, impulse control.
So there's a lot more non-motor.
So impulse control can be a symptom, not a side effect?
Correct. Some people may have that even initially.
Like what would you consider like an impulse?
I mean, if someone is someone is an alcoholic or is a gambler. I mean, just because you're like, doesn't mean you can't get Parkinson's, right? And then now you get Parkinson's. Well, if I know there may be an issue here ahead of time, I'm not going to put you on a dopamine agonist. That's the last thing I'm going to do. So that sort of thing.
Okay.
Drooling, blood pressure fluctuations. What else? Swallowing issues, constipation, apathy.
Apathy is like running rampant in my young onset women's group.
It's hard. It's really hard.
Is there anything to help with that?
No, it really is. I mean, dopamine is our get up and go chemical, right? It's what motivates. And again, addicts have a problem with dopamine, and it's that. So when you're lacking it, it becomes so natural to just sit there. Let the world go by. You're not necessarily sad. You're not necessarily depressed. You're apathetic. And it just takes that push. It takes that push from, I would say, no, you are going to get up. We are going to go. And when you do it, you feel better. But first instinct is like, no, I don't want to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
it. I mean, I guess, is there a difference between apathy and like maybe like a fear of going out and doing stuff?
No, I mean,
this is pure like you just don't want to. The fears, especially people who fluctuate, people.
It doesn't. It's not you because you just like to sit around at home.
That's I'm like, is this?
We're not talking about Brian Baker.
I'm like, is sitting on the couch watching the Olympics bad?
Somebody like me who's like, I'm type A,
right?
And I was always on the go, and I'm constantly moving. So like those days where I was sitting on the couch, and I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not moving. I don't want to do anything. I'm like, and before I knew what was going on, people would just be like, would you like just get up and go? I'm like, I can't.
Right.
Like, I don't know what it was, but that sucks that there's not medication for that because like, and
it isn't because I mean, even though we know it's a dopamine thing, you're taking dopamine and how much dopamine you take, you're still apathetic.
Yeah.
So
that stinks.
It is tough.
All right. So those are the stages. Anything else important that people should know or like caregivers?
I think it's important just always keep in mind is that like, oh no, I've progressed to the stage. What does that mean? It's not it's not black and white like that. It's not a linear thing either. It's not like, okay, and I know this is definitely going to happen either.
That and like, so if I'm considering myself in like middle stage,
right?
Can I be in middle stage for like 15 years?
Who knows? Yeah, exactly. And that's the other thing. There's no even definition of like how long you're going to be in that stage for. And even advanced. I mean, our goal is hopefully that people don't have to reached that point
Yeah.
of advanced PD.
I know we talked about that as like a physical aspect, but do your emotional and mental behaviors change along with those stages, or is that?
Well, ultimately with staging, I mean, the longer you have, so Parkinson's is also the disease of the aging, right? So the longer you have it, also you're getting older. So cognition is going to become affected. And that's an age thing that normally happens. And then now you have this neurodegenerative disorder happening in the brain, which is going to make that stuff somewhat more pronounced. So I think definitely in terms of when we look at advanced and then this question of Parkinson's dementia and what is that? And that's when you're going to start having more hallucinations and more, you know, patients are aware that this is happening. It's different from Alzheimer's, but they're, you know, that stuff sort of starts kicking in more in that advanced section. A lot of time that is the old dopamine burden. That is, so, okay, well, let's figure out what we can simplify and cut.
Yeah.
Because if we decrease dopamine, then we may not have some of these issues. So that's when we are reaching more of that advanced portion. It's probably more cognitive hits.
Okay. Interesting.
Very interesting.
Any question? What questions do you have? Sorry, I don't know what I was going to say.
Nothing. I'm good. I'm
All right.
good.
Because I think we're going to move on to the next topic.
Imagine that.
So we'll close this one out, though. So I don't really have last 30 seconds except for the fact that the UPDRS is really just a gauge of your symptoms.
Correct.
And you use it just to help demonstrate to individuals that if you started off as like a 20 and then you come in next time and you're taking carbidopa-levodopa and you feel like it's helping but not fully.
Right.
But their numbers change, like you can go to that. But it's usually just used for clinical purposes,
Correct.
right? So in respect to that, it's like the UPDRS, like don't worry about it. Like as a patient, like don't worry about it as much.
Yeah, I mean, and again, exactly. That's like, okay, you're coming at your 11:30 appointment to see me. Well, you were just due for your dose. When last time you saw me at 9 a.m.
Right.
Very different. Right. So it's like that also gets factored in. So exactly. It's that.
When do you want to see patients? When they're on or when they're off?
Depending on what's happening to them. I mean, I don't mind seeing them on for sure, but like if it's this question of, and sometimes you do have to see them both. It's like when there really is this question of, this is really not doing anything for me. I'm like, all right, you know what? Come in first thing in the morning. I'll evaluate you. And then we'll take your meds, hang out here. And then let's evaluate you again, see what's going on. And so sometimes you have to do that based off of what they're feeling.
Interesting. Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on. So last 3 seconds. There are different stages to Parkinson's, and you talk to your doctor to see which one you're in. But to be honest, it's really just, what do I want to even say?
It's a slowly progressive disease.
Yes. And everybody is different.
And everyone's different. So
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, we'll leave it there.
Okay. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.